Isn't it amazing to keep listening to white men whine and complain about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, recently, screenwriter David Mamet did so at the Los Angeles Book Festival, and he really sounded like a complete ass with his whining. And so I saw this story and I said, oh my goodness, we got to go ahead and play for this because I got a few words. Check this out.
You sort of allude to the idea that it's possible that the sort of pendulum has shifted too far, and that, you know, there are people who say agree with you who are sort of boxed out because of the sort of because of the thinking behind diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. Do you feel like it is putting limits on the quality of the work, or on other groups, like making an impact in Hollywood?
I don't know what groups make an impact in Hollywood, right? No, people talk about movies, and the movies have to change our lives. No movie ever changed anybody's life. They're flickering images on a screen. You know, they existed originally so that we could go, so that some Jew who got tired of being a tailor would put up a screen and he would show the movie, and eventually they came out here and started the movie business. They're there to entertain us. I don't need someone to educate me. It's the same thing as a sign that says gender neutral bathroom. What's the difference between gender neutral bathroom and bathroom? Who does bathroom exclude? So what does gender neutral bathroom do? Right? It politicizes the human excretory function. It's the same thing with DEI. It's fascist totalitarianism. Leave me a fucking alone. That's what I say.
All right, so he actually said a lot more than that. The folks at the LA Times actually have a story on that where he talked about a variety of things. And so one of the things he said that, go to my iPad, Henry, he talked about the Academy Awards now requiring having some diversity standards. He goes, the idea that I can't give you a stupid effing statue unless you have 7% of this, 8% of this, it's intrusive. Now, it says here that Mamet acknowledged that discrimination barred groups from participating in Hollywood for years. He thinks the pendulum has swung too far in the opposite direction. He describes the leaders of these diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives as diversity capos and diversity commissars. And I love this here. The film industry has little business improving everybody's racial understanding, as does the fire department, Mamet said to a few loud laughs in the crowd. He argued that his colleagues are better off selling popcorn than trying to improve representation for women, queer talent, and other marginalized groups. Okay. Complaining about bathrooms, we heard that. And then he went on to talk about some other deals, but his also was interesting. Does Mamet think of his children as Nepo babies who benefited from his illustrious career? Not at all, he said. He feels gratified that they've learned from being on set with him. Quote, they earned it by merit, he said of daughter Zojia Mamet, who starred in Girls. They haven't benefited from any type of privilege, he said. And he thinks that DEI initiatives are taking away hard-earned opportunities. Quote, nobody ever gave my kids a job because of who they were related to. Okay, allow me to unpack this. So I'll start here. You heard in the clip, he talked about how a Jew created Hollywood, how they came out west. In fact, there's a book that's really a great book, which is an award-winning book. It's called An Empire of Their Own. It's how the Jews invented Hollywood. Fantastic book. Takes you through the history of Hollywood. But you know what's going to happen when you read that book? You're going to read about how those same founders of Hollywood actually had considerable racism in Hollywood. How they froze out African Americans, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera. Those same individuals blocked advancement of African Americans. The early portrayals of black folks you had folks in blackface, white actors in blackface. And then when you did have black actors, you had them as some of the most clueless individuals talking like this. And then you also had the black people who just played maids and butlers. Yep, that was that same Hollywood. And those things continued through the decades. You begin to see these things change when you begin to see advancement with civil rights. But see, here's the thing that's interesting that you would think a screenwriter who's 76 years old would understand. Do you realize that movies and music is really America's greatest export? What I mean by that is, as we do this show right now, there are people who are watching this show who are not in the United States. There are people in this show who are watching in India, who are watching in the UK, who are watching from Canada, who are watching from Jamaica or the Bahamas, who are watching from different countries. If I pulled up the YouTube the dashboard, I will show you the folks who are watching all around the world. And do you know what media has done? Media has actually shaped the perspective of how people view Americans through the mediums. And so if you lived overseas in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s up to present day, your view of America was shaped through what you saw in the movies. This is the same Hollywood that when 12 Years a Slave came out, Chiwetel was removed from the poster overseas and Brad Pitt was put on the poster. I'm sorry, wasn't Chiwetel Ejiofor the star of the film because he was the one who was 12 years a slave? So even in that movie, they took the brother off and put Brad Pitt on because for so long, Hollywood say, yeah, we can't market black people overseas. We can't market black movies. But 2/3 of the world is people of color. That thing called racism in Hollywood. And so what David says here is that I think the pendulum has swung too far. I'm sorry. You mean to tell me when you have movies that are largely, and when I say largely, I'm talking 80 and 90% directed by white men? And then when you have all white writers' rooms, and then when you have all white production rooms, and when you have folk who hire their friends and they lock people out, I'm sorry, explain to me the pendulum has swung. Let me help y'all out. If the pendulum is over here and it's 90% white, if you say the pendulum has swung too far, that means it's now 90% black Latino. That's not the case. See, really what David is saying is, damn it, we don't have all the jobs anymore. Damn, we now gotta compete. They now are creating programs that are forcing us to have to now talk to other people who don't look like us in order for them to get hired. And it is driving white people crazy. There's a reason I wrote my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Because they now have to compete. And so David Mamet, who's 76 years old, he can't stand the fact that a young black writer who in the history of Hollywood was frozen out and the only way he could get onto a lot was if there was a broom in his hand, now has access. See, he says in here that, it's taking away hard-earned opportunities. Really? Really? In the same breath, how he says his kids earned it. Watch me now. His kids earned it by merit from being on set with him. So you mean daddy brought daughter to work every day, or sons to work, they now have access to the system because of daddy. let me unbutton. Then he says, nobody ever gave my kids a job because of who they were related to. Do y'all understand that the best way for you to get a job in the NFL to be a coach is to be related to one? The tree of NFL coaches that are sons and nephews of other coaches is tremendous. It even happens in the booth, the broadcast booth. Phil Simms, followed by his son Chris Simms, who flamed out at quarterback, but now he's a top announcer. Multiple folks named Albert who are announcers. Multiple people named Buck who are announcers. How many black people, David, have an opportunity to come to the set every day? And let's just be real. David Mamet, I think that's how his name is pronounced, is a legendary screenwriter. Are you trying to convince me that if your last name was Mamet and you asked for a meeting in Hollywood, the first question they would not ask is your daddy David? You damn right you're going to get a meeting. Oh, you're probably going to get a meeting because you're going to receptions and parties with your daddy, and you now are meeting the elite of Hollywood. You're now meeting the folks who greenlight films. You're now meeting the folks who produce films. You're meeting the folks who direct films. And so there's no doubt that they are going to hook up David Mamet's daughter with an opportunity because of who her daddy is. And see, I love this here. I love this. They learned from me. They learned from me by being on set every day. Quote, they earned it by merit. Michael Jordan had sons. He's arguably the greatest basketball player ever. They sat next to him every day. They went to games with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's sons can't play like Michael Jordan. So this idea that just because your kids came with you, just somehow that makes them amazing and highly talented because they came to work with you. But see, what the David Mamets don't want to confront is your family is getting the hookup because of you. And Hollywood is all about the hookup. Who do you know? What the Mamets cannot stand. See, I'm staying on that. The pendulum has swung too far. Y'all, this is the pendulum. This is how far it swung. Oh, let me go back. This is the pendulum. This is how far it swung. Not here, not halfway, not here, not here. It was here, and it swung right here. Oh, they're taking away hard-earned opportunities. What the haters of DEI don't like is that they have had this thing to themselves. Y'all, I'm in the media business. You think I'm lying? If I ask Henry to come out here right now and say, Henry, you worked in production for 30 years who in DC. You've worked at all of these places. NBC, ABC, CBS, C-SPAN, all of these people. When we had the TV One show, y'all, during TV One, we contracted the studio out with News Channel. And I was in there one day. Now, mind you, we're a black-owned network. And I'm sitting here, and I had to ask the question, why is nearly everybody I see as a technician non-black? Now, we had a couple of black folks who ran cameras, but the folks in audio, the folks in video playback, the folks in lighting, the folk in other areas of production, there were very few black people. Because you know why? Because so-and-so would say, well, I got a buddy. I got a buddy. That's how jobs get filled. We've frozen out of those economic opportunities. Very few African Americans. Look, I'm going to be straight up. When we launched this show, all of my audio technicians were black. I said, Henry, you got to tell my man he gonna go have to hire some black people to train them how to do audio. Here's my whole point. You cannot change the game unless you bring in folk, and you can't depend on folks' good nature to do it. John Landgraf, who was the president of FX, he said that. I've talked about him beforehand. John Landgraf saw it. He said, I cannot have 90% of my showrunners and directors being white men. He said, quote, I love my white men. He said, but my job is to produce content for a diversified audience. If all of my content, if all of my writers, my showrunners, my directors are coming from the same perspective, then I'm not going to be able to appeal to a broader audience, and they will not be able to watch my shows. Therefore, my ratings will not be able to go up. My shows will not win awards. I will not be able to generate ratings. I will not be able to increase advertising, and then I'm going to be out of a job. So John Landgraf said, this got to change. Within a year, numbers had changed. Because you know what happened? Because they were forced to do so, they were forced to go talk to women, white women. They were forced to go find black folks and Latinos. Chris Rock called out Lorne Michaels at Saturday Night Live. Chris Rock said, y'all keep going to the same two places to get the same people to be on Saturday Night Live. Y'all go to Second City, or y'all go to the same white comedy clubs. He said, y'all don't go to the black comedy clubs. Y'all don't see the amazing black talent. He said, because y'all keep going to the same people and the same places. Chris said, y'all are gonna have to go to some other places in order to do that. I don't have the name of it right now. Y'all find it for me. But there was a famous black comedy club in Los Angeles. And guess what? All the white comedy clubs, Laugh In, Laugh Factory, that's where all the white comics. The black comics couldn't go there. If you go to Amazon Prime Video, I think it's Amazon or Hulu, my man, a guy toured, they have a documentary called Fat Tuesdays. Because what happened was the black comedy club where Robin Harris was, that's where all the black talent was. They couldn't get to the white comedy club. They were frozen out of the white comedy clubs, except for a few black people. Guy Torrey created Fat Tuesday, which allowed the black comedians to have one night, and for the white talent folk to come see them. That's how many of them got shows. If God doesn't create that, then you don't put them in front of the folk who are picking the people to do television shows, sitcoms, and movies. And also fill writers' rooms. See, the David Mamets, what they can't stand is, they can't stand the fact that what the Academy is now saying is, y'all have to do this. We're going to force you to do this because, David, we can't depend on folk doing this thing the right way. And that's really what DEI does. And see, this is very simple to anybody white who opposes DEI. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. See, now, don't come talk to me about hard-earned opportunities and how some folks getting frozen out when y'all been freezing us out for more than 100 years. Now, all of a sudden, y'all want to talk about merit. Now, all of a sudden, y'all want to talk about, oh, so-and-so deserves it. Do you really want to have that conversation? The number of talented, smart black people who were kept out of medical schools, kept out of law schools, kept out of writers' rooms, kept off of the stage, kept out of numerous jobs, and now all of a sudden, a couple of black people and Latinos, and let's be real clear, the greatest beneficiary of DEI has been white women. Now, because the room is no longer white male faces, oh my God, the pendulum has simply swung too far. Really? Is that what you're saying? Now, a lot of these DEI initiatives are BS because the leadership is not fully committed to making it possible. Nelson Peltz, who was one of the folks investing, he was trying to take down Bob Iger at Disney. Why do I have to see movies with an all-female cast? Why do I have to see movies with an all-black cast? But your white ass sure didn't mind them black dollars for Black Panther when it hit $1 billion. See, y'all, he was upset because they said, maybe we should start making movies and folk actually see themselves on it and they might be interested. Everybody swore Barbie was going to be a massive failure. It's too feminist. You know what's not feminist? Green. You know what? Not racist? Green. It's amazing how money sure can change a lot of people's view. But here's the crazy thing about Hollywood, David Mamet. A study was done that said Hollywood could generate an additional $10 billion a year if they embrace diversity. And there are still people fighting it. So what does that tell you? What they're saying is, well, hell, if that means more money, we still don't give a damn. And my last point before I go to my panel on this, and that is I need y'all to understand that DEI only works when leadership says it's a priority. When leadership says this is going to happen. So David Mamet, if you don't like the standards that the Academy has put in, why don't you sit down with your friends who are writers and showrunners and directors and producers and studio heads and say, why have y'all been blocking Black and Latino and Asian and Native American and white female talent all these years? Why is this a boys' club? Why do we have writers' rooms for movies, the comedy movies, where they only would go to the Hasty Pudding at Harvard and draft them? They wouldn't go to some of the great HBCUs and say, man, there's some funny people writing down here. No, they will only go to the folks who were there at Harvard. That became, literally, if you wrote there, you got hired in Hollywood. It was just automatic. They have been freezing us out of the opportunities and the money for decades. And the David Mamets are now mad because the door is open. You say well earned. This is real simple. James Brown said it best. Don't hand me nothing. Open the door and get it myself. The David Mamets of the world hate the fact that the door is now opened. Well, guess what, David? We here. And when that door gets cracked open, we gonna swing that sumbitch real wide. And we gonna bring in a whole bunch of folk with us. And you know what else, David? We now have access to our own platforms. We don't have to go through the traditional Hollywood film industry. Ask George Lucas when he made Red Tails. George Lucas, Mr. Star Wars, George Lucas, George $4 billion Lucas. He literally went to the big seven, and every single Hollywood studio turned him down because they said Red Tails did not have white heroes. And George Lucas said, but the heroes are the black soldiers. And they said, we need white heroes. And that is why George Lucas invested $60 million of his own money to finish Red Tails. And George Lucas is on the record as saying, I now know for a very small moment what it feels like to be a black director in Hollywood and have the door slammed in front of you because the heroes of your movie are not white, they are black. But I guess David Mamet, I guess he didn't read that story. Because probably if you're talking about black subjects, he's not interested. Final comment from my panel. Jonquil, you first.
Well, the whole thing with DEI is that there's this assumption that because the door is open, that you lack the skills and the talent to do that job and be the best at that job. I think that's one of the things that's left out quite often. And secondarily, media is one of the most powerful forms of influence in the world, right? We're talking about television, film, music. I mean, what is portrayed on television, what we consume on a daily basis affects how we view each other, and it affects how others across the world view us. And it is very important that there is diversity on screen, and that I respectfully disagree with his sentiments about movies don't change people's lives. There are people that there's articles that I have written where music has saved people, movies, television series have saved people. People have learned emergency techniques from the media just from watching scripted television shows. And so I just said all that to say that diversity is important. And just like you stated, just because the door is open, you're just giving me the opportunity. But that does not mean that I am not the most qualified to do that job.
Joy.
Let me tell you, the door isn't open far enough, but it's open just enough for us to know what to do with people like David. David, I wish you difficult times in getting your movies made. Not only is he a screenwriter, he's also a director. Who would want to work with a person like that? If you were over one of these major productions, you are an employer. Who would believe that he is not discriminating against them with language and talk like that? Any insurance company that's looking to support one of his films should think twice. David is from a bygone era, and maybe his last movie has been made.
Mustafa closes out.
Black excellence and Black talent has always scared many people in America. As we came out of the Reconstruction period, then they began to create these films like Birth of a Nation, first one ever shown at the White House, that began to reframe who we are and our experiences and the value that they did not see us bringing to America. Then you fast forward to modern times. We remember the words of Miss Fannie Lou Hamer when she said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." That is a set of experiences that many people of color in Hollywood had to go through. No matter how talented they were, no matter how excellent they were, they still couldn't get the sets of opportunities. But the pendulum is slowly swinging, and we find opportunities now, as you said, on so many different types of platforms to make sure that people cannot deny the excellence that we bring forward, the ingenuity, the innovation. So as we have always, when we began to make progress, folks have tried to find ways, either both subtly or in your face, to slow that down. But no longer are you going to be able to do that, because we are going to not only embrace our excellence, but we're going to make sure that the world knows it in every form and fashion that it exists.
Gotta love it. The pendulum has swung too far.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.